And these Republicans are trying to disenfranchise millions of voters in Texas as part of a scheme to rig the midterm election. What we're committed to doing as Democrats in New York, in California, in New Jersey, across the country, is make sure that the congressional maps are as fair as possible. The people of Texas are at risk of not having fair maps. We have a responsibility of making sure that we look at every single state of the union and do what we can to ensure that we maximize fairness in those jurisdictions.
I think it's pretty farcical for Hakeem Jeffries to say that he just wants things to be fair. What he wants is to be speaker, and he's willing to take any measures that he sees as facilitating that goal. What we have playing out in California is we already have an independent, nonpartisan redistricting commission that was established by voters through a democratic process. And now the governor of the state, Gavin Newsom, is talking about trying to override the will of voters and abolish that commission and replace its maps with those drawn by himself and the supermajority legislature. And what they're talking about, by the way, is trying to wipe out 6 of the 9 seats that Republicans currently have in Congress. So what would that mean? It would mean that California's congressional representation would be 3 Republicans and 49 Democrats. So we'd have fewer than 6% of the congressional seats, even though Republicans get over 40% of the vote in statewide elections. I'm not sure.
The game of political theater. So you saw from the intro, Hakeem Jeffries is trying to make excuses for Democrats redistricting versus Republicans redistricting, right? One thing about Republicans I think I can respect is they don't try to pretend. I mean, in a way, they tell you, hey, look, we're evening it out. We think this is unfair. Democrats made this map. We in a position, we want to redistrict. We redistrict how we see fit because we got elected into the position and we should be able to exercise our power. And people are like, okay, fine. But when Democrats do things, they try to do this fake virtue signaling, which I think a lot of people are actually tired of. Both of it is political. But one doesn't really shy away from it being political. The other pretends it's not political. And from the intro, Hakeem Jeffries proved exactly this point. Republicans redistricting is a scheme to rig elections. When Democrats do it, Democrats redistricting is to maximize fairness. And I'm tired of these code words that Democrats love to use. Like, Democrats are the party of word salad, of corporate jargon, political jargon. When Democrats talk about talking points, this is what I'm talking about, maximizing fairness. What does that mean? Maximizing power for Democrats. That's code word. They're in full-blown panic mode. The open border strategy exposed. The push to let non-voters, non-citizens vote collapsing. They banked on flooding the system, importing future voters, overwhelming red states, and bending the rules to stay in power. This is Democrats' MO. This is politics. But Democrats say, oh, we're doing this to maximize fairness. Fairness to who? And I like the intro of the Republican in the beginning talking about, no, this man cares about being speaker. Political interest. But Americans are waking up. All while Hakeem leads the charge to single-digit approvals. He's not effective. This is why some Democrats are calling for him trying to call for him to get primaried. So it's okay when they do it, but not the Republicans. Got it. A legit LOL at the maximum fairness line. Maximize fairness line. Like, no one believes you. And Democrats are like, these is why they resort to these tactics. This is why they protect illegals so desperately. Because they don't want to go through trying to convince the American people because they got nothing to sell worth the American people's time. This is why they lost. This is why their approval ratings in the dumps. I just did a video on this. And you got, what's his name? O'Rourke. This guy hasn't been relevant since 2013, if I remember correctly. 2015, 2016. Beto O'Rourke, I think, even if that is his real name, I forget his name all the time. But here's him talking about, right, and this is the fake virtue that I'm talking about. He's saying the opposite of what Democrats actually are. He's going to make this argument that Democrats care more about being right than being in power.
Match fire with fire. I think Democrats in the past too often have been more concerned with being right than being in power. And we've seen Republicans only care about being in power regardless of what is right.
So you support the Newsom effort because California right now has an independent commission that does districts in as fair a way as possible, in nonpartisan way as possible. And you're saying Democrats should, even though you don't approve of it, Democrats should do it too.
We have to get serious. We have to be absolutely ruthless about getting back in power. So, yes, in California, in Illinois, in New York, wherever we have the trifecta of power, we have to use that to its absolute extent. And then the last thing, this may end up biting Republicans in the ass. You have the possibility that they will disperse Republican voters to make up these 3 or 4 or 5 new congressional districts and put those districts in play. So in Texas, we've got to get out there and register and meet the voters who are going to decide the outcomes in these next elections, if they're successful with this redistricting. Our group, Powered by People, is doing this right now on the ground. We can't wait for 2026. We got to do the work right now in 2025.
So
I tell you, Democrats are some special people, right? They try to ban Donald Trump off of the ballot, right? We trying to protect democracy by removing democracy. That's the Democratic Party. Or we must ruthlessly fight for power. I don't agree with it, but we must ruthlessly do that. You already tried to arrest the guy. You already tried to raid Trump's house because apparently he had some documents that could expose Obama, which is going on right now in the background. Like, if you look at the actions of these people, they don't believe in the issue they speak. Like, oh, we care about being right, we care more about being right than being in power. Lie. You just tried to take a guy off the ballot. You raided his house. You tried to disqualify him from running as president. You try to push all this narrative to, like, you try to disenfranchise your own voters when they wanted Biden out, right? If you was caring about being right, you'd have been like, oh, Democrats should host a primary, but you didn't host a primary. People wanted an open primary when Kamala Harris was seen as a front runner in 2024. Y'all didn't do that either. Y'all just, here delegates, designate Kamala Harris as your nominee without the Democratic voters' input on it. But you care about being right. You don't care about you're not ruthlessly pursuing power right now, Democrat. Make it make sense. Only a Democratic voter will believe that. I'm being honest here. Only a Democratic voter will believe anything that's coming out of his mouth. But if you're an independent like me, even if you're a left-leaning independent, you know what he's saying is like, there's too many evidence pointing to the contrary. You've always been about ruthlessly pursuing power, Democrats. This is why you let illegals vote in your states, right? Even though majority of Americans don't agree with it. Even though majority of Americans believe that there should be voter ID, y'all don't do it because it'll disenfranchise voters. But, I digress. Let's continue with this segment here. I think this was a good discussion about the gerrymandering and the redistricting and getting some of the pushback from a conservative lens. Let's take a look.
Statewide elections. I'm not sure that sounds very fair to me, to use Leader Jeffries' term.
Well, let's talk more about Hakeem Jeffries there, Congressman. He says what they're going to do is fair. What the GOP is going to do, especially in Texas, is only at the bidding of President Trump.
Well, look, to be honest, I don't love what's going on in Texas either, but it is very different than what's happening in California because California has an independent commission that has been set up by voters. And so for the governor to say that he's going to ignore that or try to override it or circumvent it, that is directly defying the will of California voters who have said by an overwhelming majority that they want this process to be nonpartisan, that voters ought to pick politicians. It shouldn't be the other way around with politicians picking their voters. But what's more, even if you look at the most aggressive plan that's being put forward in California, in Texas, that would still leave the Democrats with about a quarter of the seats over there. Whereas what they're proposing in California is to reduce the representation of Republicans to 6% in a state that is already a one-party state, with the Democrats having a super-duper majority in the legislature, holding the governor's office and every other statewide office. So it would be eliminating any semblance whatsoever of checks and balances in our state.
So, Congressman Kyle,
that's a good point he made, right? That the voters essentially took that power out of the governor's hands in California, but he's going to override that to play this little political tick for tat, right? In a lot of these other states, the governor gets to decide how the redistricting goes. And even the Republican here, he's making an argument that, hey, even when we were redistricting this stuff, it may be even aggressive, but still there's a sizable representation of Democrats to still be reflected in these districts. While what the Californians are doing is they're trying to eliminate more representation of the Republican voter, even though 40% of the population in California are conservatives, are Republicans. They're only allowing them to express that with what, 3 seats out of 52, only 3 seats. Really, California? That's less than, like he said, 6%. While even Texas's most regressive redistricting, it still had Democrats represented at 25%. But you're talking about maximizing fairness. This is a ruthless pursuit of power, pretending to be good. This is the games that I'm talking about. This is why, for me, I have such a bias against Democrats. Republicans going, hey, it's in our power, it's in our right to do so because we won an election. We're allowed to decide how we redistrict these things. And we try to be as fair as we can. Democrats, they pretend that they're doing this stuff, but in reality, they're like, no, let's try to, give us a little bit more extra. We need power. We need this. We need that. And the voters had to step in and said, no, we need an independent commission because what y'all doing right here, y'all could easily abuse the system and not care about us anymore. And in spite of that, Gavin Newsom wants to override that. Make that make sense. We care more about being right than being ruthlessly in power, huh? Beto O'Rourke? Ridiculous. I digress. Let's continue.
What do you think will happen in your state of California? Do you think Governor Newsom will pull off, as you said, redistricting based on his map?
Well, Newsom will do whatever he thinks works to his own advantage. He's obviously out there trying to run for president. Really, he's trying to run for a second time. He'd hoped he was going to be the guy after Biden stepped out in 2024. So he's latching onto this as somehow a way to put himself in the spotlight, and he'll continue to pursue another path he thinks is helping him in that respect. I do think that if they move forward and try to come up with some way to redo the map, that will require going to the voters again. What they'll do is they'll call a special election. And I think the California voters will reaffirm what they said before, which is they don't want this to be a partisan process. Granted, Newsom and his allies will try to fool them in every way possible. They'll even probably make the summary on the ballot itself of what the measure will do extremely misleading. They'll have unlimited amounts of money coming in to try to fool voters into going back on what they said before. But I think at the end of the day, people will see through it and hope.
This is one reason I agree with the left. We need to take money out of politics because that's craziness. You're going to mislead voters, tricking them into voting for an amendment that does the opposite of what is stated in the summarized version. Yeah. Political, right? But conservatives don't pretend that it's something, oh, we're trying to do the righteous thing here. But Democrats do. Like, make it make sense. Democratic voters are being tricked by their own politicians. Yeah, we should take money out of politics, bro. Hey, I agree with you, leftists. Yeah, we need to take money out of politics. This is ridiculous. What? And I know I'm going to get the comments, Republicans do the same thing, but Republicans ain't out here trying to say slogans like, well, we redistrict is to maximize fairness. I don't think I hear Republicans saying that. So Republicans are more truthful than the Democrats because they're both doing the same actions, but one pretends that there's some moral indignation. And the Republicans aren't overriding a committee to do their redistricting, while Gavin Newsom's attempting to do that. But Gavin Newsom is supposed to pretend to be a moderate. Yeah, okay. I digress. I'll leave it at there. Let me know your thoughts and perspective in the comment section below. I'll be interested to hear how you guys are reacting to the Democrats' desperate attempt to spin their redistricting as maximizing fairness, as if they're doing some great thing for the will of the people. Like they have no political interest to redistrict their strongly Democratic cities and states. I digress. Let me know your thoughts and perspective in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Please share this video if you feel so inclined. It really does help me out in the algorithm. And I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.